Epic and Apple are engaged in a battle that will change the face of every iPhone in the world. The European Union has said that Apple has to let Epic Games put an app store on iPhone, but Apple has said absolutely not, or at least not this version. Let's talk about why on That Game Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter from That Park Place, and I am here on That Game Place with Culture Casino. Culture, you have the Jonas J. Campbell seal of approval. Did you know that?
Thank you. I appreciate that. You have the officially licensed stamp. I'm sending it right your way.
Thank you very much. We have a story out of, well, many places, but this is something that you and I have been tracking for quite some time. You and I have had one of our first huge conversations that we had in collaborating on when talking about video games is the fact that Fortnite is probably the first step into the metaverse, and the fact that Epic is building something big over there. So Disney getting in on that, like when they talk about that $1.5 billion investment by Disney into Epic Games, I view that as a good move. Well, some people disagree. I don't know, Culture. Is that something that I'm just insane on? Are you one of the people who disagrees with me on that?
Well, I think it's a foot in the door, so I agree with you there. It's a foot in the door to something bigger. Epic plans to be available in many forms and pretty much all forms. And if you're going to have something that transcends the gaming marketplace, the business marketplace, and everything else, that's gonna make its way into the metaverse. I think this is the best first step. So Disney isn't falling down on the mark here for a change. But at the same time, they couldn't develop it themselves if they wanted to. So it was more desperation than anything else, in my opinion. But
yeah, I think you're correct. And Disney IP in the hands of people that are not Disney tends to do better. Looking at Spider-Man, looking at Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, things like that are not officially run by Disney tend to do better on the IP side and tend to be more favored. But when we're talking about Epic Games, obviously the makers of Fortnite, that's the biggest thing they do, but that doesn't mean it's the only thing they do. Fortnite and Epic Game Store submitted to Apple for launch in the European Union. This story from obviously a few days ago. We're going to take you through the story, which transcends even this article here. This by Benjamin Mayo, June 30th of 2024. Look right there. This is the John Wick character that they had in Fortnite, or the guy that was supposed to be John Wick. Obviously, you can get actual John Wick in Fortnite now. I've got that one. I've got Keanu on there, and then I've got him doing air guitar in the emotes. I feel very special there. The special EU App Store rules were rolled out earlier this year in response to the Digital Markets Act, which forced Apple to open up the iPhone software ecosystem to include alternatives to the App Store. This has been locked down for a very long time and was the root of a huge problem between Apple and Epic in the past. Apple taking a 30% cut of anything sold through the App Store, including in-app purchases. So this is something that Epic said could not stand. So Epic was allowed at the time to do hot fixes and hot updates. They were a special developer class that they could push updates to their games without having to go through Apple's approval process. So they pushed an update that allowed for a 30% cheaper version of the V-Bucks packages if you bought directly from Epic. And obviously Apple kicked Epic out of the App Store. Of course, I'm over here trying to recall it, but Benjamin Mayo is doing a good job of recounting it here. Fortnite was kicked out of the App Store in August of 2020, so long ago, as Epic Games sneaked in a way to buy V-Bucks without using Apple's in-app purchase system in breach of App Store rules. Apple pulled Fortnite from iOS entirely and banned Epic Games from the App Store. I remember I was new to Fortnite at the time, and I didn't realize how many people were on mobile phones that I was being put into matchmaking with, because I was playing on a Switch at the time. So my scores got worse. I didn't get as far into matches when they removed all the people who were just fumbling around using the iPhone. Yeah. There was no path back for Epic to iOS until the European Union's Digital Markets Act legislation, which Epic has campaigned strongly for and wants to see similar rules adopted by the US and other regions. I feel like that's going to happen long term. Using the new rules brought in as a consequence of the DMA, Epic says it's currently planning to launch within the next couple of months on iOS in the European Union. Well, now here's what's interesting. Once approved, these apps must pay the core technology fee, a 50 € fee per install per year. When app downloads exceed 1 million units, app marketplaces like Epic Games and AltStore also pay this fee on every install. The free 1 million on-ramp applies to apps, not the marketplace themselves. Here's where it gets interesting. Epic says its EU iOS App Store is approved, but that Apple wants a change. The company has reportedly asked Epic to redesign the app's buttons. The Epic Game Store app for EU iPhones has passed Apple's notarization process. It was originally denied, putting the alternative App Store a step closer to selling apps directly to iOS users outside of the App Store. Apple Insider reports that while Apple confirmed the app had passed, it has asked Epic to fix the buttons in a future submission to the company's app review process. But the approval is just temporary, posted Epic CEO Tim Sweeney, who puts Apple's requests differently. He says the company is demanding we change buttons in the next version, vowing that the company will fight this. The apparently conditional approval is just the latest part of the back and forth saga between Apple and Epic. Previously, Apple reinstated Epic's Sweden's European developer license after EU regulators started investigating its decision to pull it. That is, Apple pulling Epic's European developer license. It doesn't seem like they're playing very nice with each other here.
Well, I would say that this is a fight that Tim Sweeney picked on purpose, and he knew that there would be some ramifications, but I think in a lot of ways he's right because you cannot let a monopoly stand. If you have, the desire to be in a marketplace yourself, which is what he wanted to do. And I'm going to tell you right now, every game developer should be cheering for this, rooting for this even, because this will open the door for EA and many others to have their own marketplaces and skip what I call the Apple tax.
Yeah, I think until I got a Mac, I really didn't understand what was going on in the App Store. I appreciated that most everything worked through the App Store, although as it's gotten larger and more things have gotten in there, and Apple has become, let's say, more intimidating in some of their tactics and doing things that I don't appreciate, I've begun to see them more as a monopoly. Obviously, when they talked about having access to people's phones, ostensibly for a good reason, in order to make sure that that iCloud accounts didn't have things that shouldn't be in anyone's account. When they talked about that, it obviously required somebody from Apple looking into everyone's iCloud accounts. These are the kind of things that, as they get to a certain size, there starts to be a responsibility, a quote responsibility on their part to police. And so it's easier if there isn't a monopoly, if there is a system here where you can have alternative app stores. And the more alternative app stores there are, the more, let's say, competition. And therefore, if you want an iPhone that is actually locked down, it raises that as a potential possibility for users. If Apple doesn't want privacy on iPhones and Apple is the only app store, obviously that limits the way that you can use an iPhone and still keep your privacy. Let's get back to this fight between Epic and Apple, though. Tim Sweeney, a man who has no shortage of big ideas, Apple's DMA saga has taken a turn towards the absurd. Apple is now telling reporters that this approval is temporary and are demanding we change the buttons in the next version. That seems ridiculous, by the way, which would make our store less standard and harder to use. I think I don't understand why they would care if Epic's App Store has different buttons of any kind. If it's more difficult to use, then that would actually help the App Store, I would say.
Well, and my thought process is it's probably easier to use, and they came up with a good GUI, and Apple doesn't like that they did a good thing. This is the problem with these confiscatory, measures that Apple has taken all along. I mean, if you talk to developers who've worked on iPhone apps, they say this is more difficult than working with Android. This is more difficult than, dealing with a different OS. It just truly is. And the fact that they believe that they can dictate what a marketplace looks like, please.
Yeah, I do think it's quite absurd, honestly. And with that being said, I think that once this is all said and done, I will reinstall Fortnite. I'll have two versions of Fortnite on my iPhone here, both the Apple version that stopped functioning and the Epic Games version whenever that comes around. This is speaking of that metaverse context here. I think Epic, if there is an Epic App Store that you can download on your iPhone, this invites a whole new world of actual functional apps for Epic, not just things that you would download presumably to play them, but things that maybe the Epic Games version would be a little bit better than something that comes from Apple themselves. Maybe a decent calculator app or something like that.
No, I would step right up to the plate. And as we see more of these types of things emerge, I strongly suspect that there will be whole marketplaces that you can subscribe to. And my concern isn't about the privacy because that's out the window with Apple. My concern is that, the games just be secure, that the apps that are sold to me are secure and aren't some form of spyware. And essentially, the marketplace is guaranteeing that.
Well, that's why I deleted Facebook, of course, because that is essentially spyware.
It is
Now,
spyware.
there is one other thing that I find interesting. If there would be an Epic App Store for iPhone version of a software, and then an App Store version of the software, if Epic Games is more consumer friendly, if the Epic Games version of that would be more friendly to users than the Apple version. If you get two versions, this will clearly state if one is better than the other, then there is even competition on the same device. It'll show, I think, in a more clear way what exactly Apple is doing to interfere with people who want to put things out on the on iOS.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to say App Store than iOS, but then again, Apple did try to trademark the term App Store because they felt like that was a derivative of Apple. See, this is the thing. Apple used to be a company that they would design something and maybe they were a little overbearing, but they were overbearing for a good reason. And I don't know at this point that I can say that they're overbearing for ostensibly a good reason. It just seems like they're overbearing for monopolistic reasons.
Yeah, across the board, and they kind of always have been. But it sounds like you might be coming out of the cult of Mac, Jonas. Congratulations.
Well, if they ever come up with a phone that can run all of my walled garden devices, that I can just transfer everything out of it. If we start to get into the Hackintosh phase of iPhones, then maybe I'll be there. If Apple wants to sign their own death warrant, they can release iMessage on other app stores outside of iPhones there. Just maybe, just maybe. All right. With that being said, what do you guys think about this? Is this something that interests you? Is this within the realm of gaming? I can see huge ramifications for this and the metaverse. I personally see it. I don't know that I've communicated that well to the audience. This is such a large subject that is kind of a tip of the iceberg kind of subject for gaming and for the metaverse in general. And I don't want to call this that metaverse place because, my goodness, how pretentious would that be? But I think the metaverse is applicable to the game space in a way that it is even more applicable to, like, the stupid Office and FaceTime or Meta Time, whatever they're calling their version of it out there. I think this is a big thing, and I want to know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. But what you really need to do is go subscribe to Culture Casino over there on his channel, and maybe also subscribe to That Gameplays. And until then, game on.